when I start the repot process here.
Before you start, we have notes on this whole workshop, and I have paper notes that you can actually touch and put in your binder today. So they're all written out here, and you'll get them at the end, so you don't have to take a lot of notes.
That's how we brought you to stay till the end. You have to tolerate us. You have to tolerate us in order to get your prize.
Right, if I hand them out now, you'll read them, and then you won't watch.
And if you leave. So we're kind of handcuffing you a little bit. Okay, so the tie down wires on the bottom of the pot, I'm gonna start, and what I do is I cut them, and I cut them in the middle. Okay, then I take my wires and I bend them. I bend them out. Then I go through. Okay, and then I have my drain screen wires. I'm gonna pinch these in. And I can even cut these so I can lay it down. I'm not worried about getting these, I'm just cutting these just so that I can set the tree down. Then I use a tool called a comma. If you guys don't have one of these, Ron, I know you sell these, right, Ron? You got these?
I do.
These are like invaluable repotting
And
tools.
3 different varieties.
Very nice. Okay, so once that's done, I'm gonna go around, and now you have to be careful when you have a larger tree in a small pot so you're not desiccating or messing up your, and I'm just gonna take this, and this isn't a tool where you're gonna sit there and just kind of gently, this is a ripper, so you're gonna go in there and you're really gonna get in there. You go around the outside.
So this is hard for Brian to get that tool in there, because again, this is a small pot, there's a lot of foliage on that tree, there's a lot of roots on this tree in that pot.
Yeah, this is
So
gonna,
he's working hard to get through that soil.
this is gonna be a good way, now we've been preaching the use of akadama for a long time. This is gonna be an opportunity for you to see a root ball that's been created with akadama. And so this won't be any more just preaching, you're gonna actually get to see. I mean, you can see I can't barely get this thing on the bottom, so I'm just taking it slow, going around.
Are you pulling moss off first usually, or are you leaving it on there?
I'm gonna take it off in a sec. I could probably go ahead and do that. So let's see. Okay, so I can get this out of the pot right now. So I'm gonna go through now, and I know this, I can just kind of peel this back. So I'm gonna take this moss off the top, and I'm gonna set this aside, and this is going to be reused. This is gonna be dried out and put in my future top dressing mix, which we'll talk about down the way, but that's not garbage. So once you start propagating moss on your pots, it's a good way to continue to have that propagation happen.
Do you have moss on most of your pots?
I top dress all of my pots.
And it's on there all the time, not just for a show?
Nope, all the time.
Even in the winter.
Well, so,
Potting workshop, so we don't get it.
yeah, we can't get crazy, but you know, all of a sudden we got really cold really fast, and a lot of things didn't happen in my garden that usually happens before I put stuff away, so, you know, I mean, I'm a hobbyist, this isn't what I do for a living, so, yeah, things happen. Okay, so now I can just go ahead, and that comes out like that.
So this is what in the intermediate class we teach as a solid root ball. This root ball is solid roots. It's all fine roots that have grown through the akadama and are holding this together tight into a perfect oval.
Yeah.
And are you happy with how many roots are there, or should have been repotted last year, because there's so many roots in there?
No, I would actually, if I wasn't doing this and I didn't want to demonstrate a small manageable tree in the time that we had, this is the best option I had for this demonstration. I probably would have left this another 1 to 2 years.
Oh,
Because I want to keep this growth in check. So what's going to happen is when I repot this, it's going to stimulate this to grow more vigorously.
okay.
So I would have left this longer. I think a lot of times we repot our trees too often, especially when you're starting to get a more finished ramified tree.
You don't want your roots to be that happy because on the top of your tree is that happy.
Correct. Yep, correct. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave this, I want people to see this.
Okay, Be a great time to come up and I'll take this out of it.
Yeah, so if you guys want to come up and take a look, this is what,
So I could just pull this out of here, Brian, right? I can just pull this out of this nursery pot, right?
no.
No.
I bet he can.
Why not?
You probably could, because you're a very robust, strong man and you work out regularly. But it might not be the wisest thing to do.
But that's not the wisest thing. Okay, so I'll do it a different way.
I'll just move that.
Yeah.
No, you're probably not gonna reuse that pot then?
I'm gonna glue it back together.
You guys see over this?
So how long had it been since your last repot?
It's probably 3 years.
How do you know when water collects in the top?
Yeah, when it's not percolating anymore, that's a good indicator that you should be repotting. But if you guys ever grown junipers before, you know that they're not known for a super fine root system. But if you look at this is that's the root system you want. Every single one of those roots you see are actively feeder roots that are helping the development of this tree. And that's what you get from macadamia. That's what it's aoki. So I used here. I'll go over the soil I'm going to use. It's right here, though. You guys can actually see it. It's a mixture of akadama, Japanese pumice, and lava rock.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
Okay, but the majority, it's like 80% akadama.
So when you think of the size of this container compared to the size of that foliage, there's a limited amount of nutrients in this container. So because of the limited size of nutrients and it's full of roots, this tree is just creeping along. It's just growing a little bit.
Fertilizer, yeah.
You do. What we want on a tree in this stage. It's not what we want on a tree in this stage.
Yeah, I fertilize differently though, and that's a whole other topic. We're gonna get in, we've got a fertilizer talk Leo and I are doing coming down the road, but this gets organic fertilizer and it got fertilized probably 4 times last year.
Okay.
Brian?
With the tea bags?
I personally don't use tea bags,
Oh, you
but
don't?
yeah, it would be
Okay.
a similar
Okay.
thing. An organic fertilizer, I put it right on top of the soil, so.
You said that you would have waited like 1 or 2 more
Mm-hmm.
years, and how do you gauge that?
Well, the reason being is that I was still getting percolation.
Oh, okay.
So I was still able to get water into the pot. It wasn't
Okay.
sitting there pooling and running off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yes, this is a solid root ball, and this is a great root ball. I could have let this go a little bit longer. And it would continue to just stay healthy and just creep along where I'm not getting those big extensions on it. Where it's just forming this nice tight compact growth. And now, like I said, I'll sacrifice a little bit, but that's okay for me because this tree's gonna get redone. I mean, this tree needs work. This tree needs to get pruned and restyled. I'll be able to do that, so.
And the notes are real complete, so the notes are gonna repeat all this stuff that we're talking about.
Okay, so Steve got this out of the pot now, out of the nursery container.
So it's going in a shallower pot. I just thought I saw this again.
Now that's the purpose of the saw.
Why not? It's going in a shallow pot. Why can't I just take the bottom half off?
That's what I
In
do.
our intermediate students around here, why wouldn't we want to do this?
I know.
Why might not this be a bad idea? Or why might this be a bad
I don't
idea?
know how far your aerial or your radial roots are down from the top. So you want to start from the top and work down.
Right.
Right.
So if I cut this off and I find that this trunk gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger underground, and I've cut off the bottom half of this pot, I'm dead. If this weren't a willow, it would be dead. It's a willow, so I could probably put it back in the ground, but that's not the point. You never, ever do this when you're repotting out of a nursery pot.
Dang.
Did you get that shot? Did you like the saw?
And when, wait, my dad,
Put that in the mom or short. Pardon?
when can you do that?
Never.
Oh, never.
Never.
Yeah, when?
Besides, you never know what the nabari is
how
under
about with
the
solid
ground.
side?
Right.
Solid
How
side.
many times on the internet do they show that?
Oh, how many? That Doug Fir. Eric, could you hand me that Doug Fir?
Makes
I
zero
still do
sense.
it.
It doesn't make
But
sense.
I won't come way up here, I'll just maybe whack it
So-
off the bottom. and then
So
work
this
it
Doug
out.
Fir was in its nursery, in its collected container up to here.
Oh, really?
So I had no idea this was there. So I had this tree positioned totally differently in how I thought it was gonna be until I took
It's
it
a
out of
nice,
the pot.
interesting trunk.
Sure. Where's my car?
So go ahead.
Slip out the back door.
So just like with a nursery container, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start at the top of this tree. Now, this is an invaluable tool that isn't a bonsai tool, but it's just a cotton pliers, these little bent tweezers. This tool gets more use repotting. I love this tool. You can keep it open like this and you can have dual, or you can, close it up and just have a single. And just taking this off down like this. It's fantastic. This thing works. This thing is just absolutely wonderful. So now notice I'm not getting crazy and I'm not ripping any wires out or doing anything goofy. What I'm doing is I'm kind of contouring on an angle the top of the soil, and then I'm going to come across tie-down wires in here somewhere where if I get them, I get them. If I don't, I'm not even worried about them. They can stay in there the rest of the life of the tree. But what's happening here is you can see, if you notice the planting before, I did not have a lot of surface roots exposed on this tree. And as I'm kind of taking this top off, I'm starting to expose a pretty nice. So this is part of the evolution of this tree. Now this tree is starting to form, you can see it. It's starting to form some nice surface roots here that were buried and you couldn't see. So now I'm able to uncover those. I'll be able to pot it a little bit higher, and it'll be this tree is going to age by 50 years after this repot, just by the exposing.
Right, and you say that they were buried, which kind of seemed to imply that they were there all the time.
Well, they were developing.
Right, that's what I wanted to.
Yeah, they were developing.
They were there, but they weren't ready to show yet.
They weren't ready to show yet. They weren't worthy of showing. The tree they were so fine and spindly that it didn't even
Right.
It didn't look. They do develop better when they're deeper in the soil.
And do we typically, as bonsai hobbyists, tend to bury our trees too deep? We even tend to plant our trees too deep, and when we plant them in the garden. So when you repot, the whole idea is to move that tree up, where you're taking soil off the top and letting new growth happen on the bottom, because now you're exposing more root structure every single time. So like Brian said, he's going to double the width of the nabari on that tree just by reducing the top of that soil. And when you see when he reduces, you know the size of the pot, there's not much more to do.
What about one of my trees that seems to be lifting itself out of the pot?
Time to repot.
That's a key to repot.
Okay.
Now, you can just see the difference in how wet this soil is, this dirt is, compared to Akadama. There's a lot of air spaces in between those particles, whereas this is all fine, solid mud. This is wet, wet, wet.
Which many people don't know that roots don't grow in soil, they grow in the air spaces.
They go in the air spaces, right.
I shouldn't say most people, a lot of people.
Most people.
Well,
Not in this group.
right.
We're not a typical group.
Splitting hairs. That's what you Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
That's right, we're not normal people.
Talk to retail people, you'll know that most don't know. More water, more water.
Right.
Okay, so now I'm to these. I got to the point where my wires were exposed, will be exposed on the top of the soil. One side came out real easily. This side I'm kind of fighting with. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to do more damage than it's worth. I cut that off. It's gone. Forgotten about it.
Now, will you take some off the bottom as well then?
I will, for sure. But I always want to start at the top because
Right.
that will allow me to
You'll know
know
what
how
you
much
got.
of that bottom to take off. So as I get down here,
Still ain't found any radial roots, Steve? Oh, actually one.
I'm finding a lot, I'm starting to get close to where a lot of the fine roots
Oh, there
are.
we go. Now I
You know, now
where
you
you're
can
at right
kind of
now.
see. And because I want this tree and roots to grow out, I am gonna take a lot off of the bottom, and I'm gonna lay those roots out so that they grow out. That's what creates the flare in the trunk.
So another thing I want people to kind of see as I'm doing this is how many times have we repotted a tree and everything just falls off your root balls? This is, there's nothing coming off of here, nothing coming out of there. This is, when you talk about the development of a tree, we get into the development of the sheen, which is the heart of the tree underneath the root ball. This has a sheen. I mean, there's nothing coming out of this that I don't want to. I have to work to get soil out of this.
So when you're repotting a tree out of a nursery pot, you really want to research what's inside here. You really want these roots. You don't want big roots that are going around like this with fine roots at the end. You want to get rid of those roots, and you want these fine roots. You can just see how many roots are here. Now, I could likely cut this right off here, and they'd be fine.
With a chainsaw.
With a chainsaw or my dad's.
And solid root balls can be gotten without having to use Japanese mix.
They can,
Yeah.
but look at the quality of this.
Oh, I know.
I would be
Yeah.
hard pressed to say that you would find a quality of feeder roots in anything less than Akadama.
Right, not to that extent.
Correct.
But a rock solid root ball,
Full of what kind of roots?
well, fine. I mean, you've seen,
Okay.
yeah. You have.
We aren't going to talk about soil
I don't want to
here.
get a soil
We aren't
argument.
going to talk
Right,
about
no,
I just
soil.
want you to look and
No,
say,
no,
are these the kind of roots that you want to achieve?
Right,
Nice roots.
they are, they are.
Let's not talk about that, especially when we have tools like this.
Yeah, we have
We have the
commas.
comma.
We could put a comma to this.
Is there a place you could go to learn about soil?
Here,
Here, there'll be a soil lecture at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Brian, how long have you had that tree?
That was a lead one.
This is an interesting tree. If you guys go, I'm sure everybody goes to like Stein's and whatever else. This was one of the little Azalea $10 little 4-inch Shimpaku juniper thing.
really?
Yeah. So this
How
was
long
a
ago?
$10 tree. This was about maybe 8 years ago.
Right. And you repotted it, so that came out of a small nursery?
The little 4-inch.
Like the fairy garden
The little
ones.
fairy garden one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then have you repotted it then one other time? In other words, is all the potting soil down there, is that all Akadama?
This is all Akadama. So it's made the transition into all pure Akadama. Yeah.
Wait, that was pure Akadama?
This is, well, no, I mean, this is all pure bonsai soil. Bonsai soil, I should say.
Yeah.
So Aoki blend is 80% Akadama, 80% hard Akadama, and Aoki blend is the bag you see down there that I carry and sell. And it's 20% pumice and lava, so about 10% pumice, 10% lava. So it's a perfect mix right out of the bag after it's sifted. After it's sifted.
Oh,
For deciduous or tropicals. For conifers, it needs to be changed a little, and we would talk about that. Brian will probably talk about that with his tree today.
So the next thing that I'm gonna do here while I have this out of the container, and this is great that we're indoors, there's no wind or like anything, so I don't have to worry about my roots like drying out in the air. In fact, that's probably really overemphasized. The chances of your roots really having a problem while you're repotting are really slim. But with the moss growing over the surface, I'm getting some moss growing up the trunk of the tree and on some of these surface roots. So I'm going to take this opportunity while I can get this tree angled and tipped around. I just moistened it a little bit. I'm going to take a brush and I'm going to get that moss off of the trunk of the tree.
why?
The moss will start to decay I mean, I don't really care about the bark on this, but it'll start to decay the wood in the tree,
Okay.
or on the tree.
And it's a different kind of moss than what you planted on the soil of the tree, or is that?
No, it's the same stuff.
Same thing, just
but it'll
growing up.
grow up the bark, and this is just keeping it nice, clean.
Yeah, it traps moisture between itself and the upper part of the trunk where it's growing on the trunk, and that'll then, like he's trying to say, make it